and welcome to the AI argument. This is Justin Collery here with me, and I'm Frank Prendergast. And today we are going to try as best we can to talk about some lighter stories because there's a lot of heavy AI stuff out there. We said last week that we would try and find fun stories to talk about. And I don't know about you, Justin, but at the start of this week, I was like, they're not there. There are no fun stories here. It's all heavy. It's all doom and gloom. Everything, all the AI news is all the catastrophes that are going to happen and all the jobs that are going to be lost and all the energy that's consumed. And for a while, I was not finding them. But I think we've done a good job. I think we've done a good job of putting together a fun show.
Pretty good job, and you got 1 out of 3 right in your 3 worries there, which is energy may be an issue, but the other 2 I'm not in the least bit concerned of. I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords, as you know. So yeah, we've had some interesting, funny stories, and maybe to kick it off, we'll start with the reverse Turing test. Have you seen this?
Yeah, that was brilliant. And also, so basically, somebody created a 3D environment, kind of like a 3D game type environment. And there were, what was it, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 5 characters in a train carriage, all historic figures, all but one powered by one of the big LLMs. And then
So
the
we had,
conductor
to
comes
give
in.
context, yeah, we had Aristotle, we had Mozart, we had Leonardo da Vinci, we had Cleopatra, and Genghis Khan. So an
Yeah,
eclectic mix, and they were in a train carriage, and they
yeah,
devised a test. And there was a ticket collector as well, and he was just an NPC. He wasn't really taking part. And what they did was they decided to set up a game whereby they would each ask each other one question, and then at the end of the game, they would have to decide which one did they think was the human. So this is like Blade Runner, except we're the ones being chased. And
yeah,
the AI did a pretty good job. Did you listen to the answers of the AIs? I mean,
yeah.
what's really funny about this story is it was really obvious who the human was, because the answer the human gave was nowhere close to the quality of the answers that came from each of the AIs. So Mozart was
Yeah.
asked, "How do you feel when you create music?" And he goes into this beautiful speech about how it touches him emotionally, and it was just fantastic. Cleopatra talked about how she exercises power and how she uses power to manipulate people and so on. Genghis Khan, who turned out to be the human, was not nearly as eloquent as the other members of the train carriage.
But he also used his human voice. And so, I would have been interesting. It would have been interesting it would be interesting to do it again. And so in the video, in advance who's who. You know which LLM is powering which character. But if the human had to type his answer in and run it through an AI generated voice also, and we all had to guess at the end, that would be add another layer of complexity to it, I think. Because, yes, you're right, the Genghis Khan answers, he wasn't able to draw on the endless knowledge of the LLMs, but also his human voice obviously would have given him away in a second. So I'd be really curious, would I be able to pick out the human if it was run through an AI voice as well? I also thought it was kind of fascinating that there was two things. There was two things I thought were interesting. One was one of the LLMs got it wrong,
Yes.
and I would never have thought that I would never have guessed. If you said to me which one is going to guess wrong, I would not have said it was going to be Claude 3 Opus.
Yes.
Excuse
Isn't
me.
that interesting?
I thought it was fascinating. The other thing I thought was interesting though was, so I think GPT-4 Turbo guessed first.
Yep.
Now, did his guess influence the other LLMs? Now, I know Claude 3 still got it wrong, even though it heard GPT-4's guess. But if all of the responses were being fed back into the LLMs, did that give the others an unfair advantage? What do you think?
Yeah, we don't know, right? Because we don't know how the test was set up. That's a really good point, though. A really, really good point. So to do the test properly, yes, you would not feed the other people. It would be a blind test.
Yeah,
I was super impressed with Llama 3, by the way, in this test. I was super impressed
I
with,
know.
so Llama 3 was Leonardo da Vinci, and the way that, the answer that they gave was brilliant. And the reasoning of each of them, it was quite interesting to hear the reasoning of the models. And they talked about, well, Aristotle was able to correctly, say this, and Cleopatra talked about power, and that's clearly, I think it's Genghis Khan. The logic was spot on, like it was really good.
Yeah, it was really impressive. And also, what I was going to say at the start was like the amount of effort that somebody went to set that up, like incredible. Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant.
And a valid test, a really, really good test, a really, really, really good test. But we also found this week then there was a story to do with, again, kind of a reverse Turing test, but this time it was to do with photography.
I
And
love
so
this.
we've all heard stories about people winning photography prizes and then having the prize taken away because it wasn't a real photograph. It was actually just a photograph that was generated by AI. But this week, what happened?
We had a real photograph coming in third place in an AI image competition and being stripped of the prize when they admitted it was a real photograph. I mean, I thought this was absolutely hilarious. And the photographer, I mean, it was revenge, pure and simple, really. The photographer, again, had also heard, had also seen these stories about AI images winning photography competitions. And he was like, well, I can do this too. And he entered quite a surreal image of, I think it was of a flamingo, maybe, might have been a baby
Yes.
flamingo or something. Very surreal, absolutely, something that you might see from an AI image generator. And yeah, won third prize. Fair play to him. And it was interesting. The he was disqualified. He was stripped of the prize, but they were very careful in their language about the importance of photography and creatives, and just that this was not the correct competition to have entered.
And actually, I don't know if you've seen. So we had, and I think this is a brilliant story. But we had the release of Lumo this week, and one of the most fascinating things I've seen from Lumo is where you take these memes. So you've got lots of memes where you have that little girl and she's standing in front of the burning building behind her. Or there's the meme of the three people, like you've got the girl who's walking down the street and the guy who's
Oh
sort of
yeah,
looking back at her and whatever. So you got all these memes, and you're able to feed them now into Lumo, and it turns them into videos, little short videos, which is brilliant. And they're just as entertaining as the memes. Like, I think this is going to open up a whole new, a whole new universe of memes for people where you can have animated memes based on previously static memes. This is going to get
yeah.
your creative juices flowing, Frank. I can see it already.
Have you tried it? Have you tried out Luma? I think it's Luma
You, I,
Dream Machine, isn't it?
Dream Machine, correct? Yeah, I haven't
And
had a chance. It's been, everybody's been trying it, and it's been very slow to generate images. So I haven't. I've just seen the images that others, or videos that others have generated.
it's yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's the kind of it's one of the next generation of AI video tools. So if I understand correctly, and again, I need to dig into it a little bit more, but if I understand correctly, it uses the same type of technology as Sora will, which is OpenAI's video generator. So we have a lot of video generators already, but they're all using the original video generation tech, and this is one of the new types, if I understand correctly. And I tried it out, and it's pretty impressive. But right now you have zero control over what happens. So if you use something like Runway, which is another AI video generator, they have incredible controls. Now the quality of what they produce isn't quite as good, from what I can tell, as Luma. But with Runway, you have all these fine-grained controls. Like you can control where the camera moves. You can control specific facial expressions by kind of marking the face and saying which way you want it to move in. So I'd kind of gotten used to that level of control. So I found it kind of weird to go back and just say, here's an image, make it move any way you want. Uh, interesting quality, but I guess I'm not 100% sure yet how useful it will be because of the lack of control. I tried something really simple. Like I just gave it an image and I said, you know, it was a picture of a man on his phone, and I said, zoom in on man on phone. But it just generated random kind of man movements, very credible, very good quality, but there was no zoom in. I tried
Yeah.
pan right again, it didn't pan right. So yeah, interesting and fun to try out, but not 100% sure yet of the practical purposes, apart
Would you be
from
worried?
generating memes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, generating memes is lots of fun anyway. Would you, I mean, the business case for these, and they have, I mean, they've released the product and they've also released their pricing scale, which I think was you get, I think it's 30 videos for free or 30 goes for free. And then you pay, I think it was something like 25 euro. Maybe it was not, maybe it was 50 euros a month. And then you got like an extra number free. And then you could pay up to 500 a month to get thousands of
Right.
generations for free. So they've set it up to clearly, I mean, one of the big questions around at the moment is how does all this make money? And from what you're saying, you would, I'm imagining for a professional content creator, you need to have that sort of control in order to be able to get the content that you want.
I think, for it to be truly useful, yes. If you're putting together YouTube videos and you need a quick 2-second cutaway to something, then it fulfills that purpose. But that seems like a very limited scope of purpose, and I'm not seeing the broader applications yet. But I've no doubt they're busy working on how do we control this thing. So
Interesting. One of the greatest evils of our time that I see coming to us is professional pride. And professional pride is everywhere. And normally I see this in, oh, AI is never going to be able to, make a great video. It's never going to be able to do the job that I do, basically. And that's professional pride. And, time after time after time, that barrier gets broken down. And one of the interesting things I saw this week in relation to Lumo was Digital Dreams was that it was professional pride among the makers of these video AIs. So there was a lot of people saying, "Oh well, Sora actually has a real world model. It's not so much an image generator as sort of a physics engine, and it
mm,
understands the underlying physics, whereas this clearly doesn't understand the underlying physics." I don't believe that for a second. I think I think they do. What I'm saying is I'm agreeing with you, right? They work in the same way, but there was a lot of chatter online saying, "Oh no, they don't work in the same way. They're
oh,
very different."
interesting.
And everything that I was listening to an interview this week from Jeffrey Hilton, one of the fathers of AI, and he was talking about working with Ilya Stutzker. And really, what came across was, the insight of Ilya and what he was working on as well. Well, you just feed loads of data into these, and they learn. They just want to learn, and they will find, connections between words and ideas and semantics, and in this case, between images that we as humans perhaps don't make. We don't even make those connections ourselves. So they create their own worldview. It might be a different worldview than what we have, but they certainly have a worldview. But it was just interesting that it was like, oh yes, yes, it's not as good as our Sora, it's
Interesting. Yeah, I need to dig into that a bit more and understand what the underlying kind of models are. Because I had thought it was, but I may have got that wrong.
I would,
Um,
I agree with you. I
oh,
think it is very similar, but it's just I was just watching the reaction to it, and people saying,
yeah,
"Oh no, it's not. It's not nearly as good. It's not the same." I think it looks brilliant.
yeah, it absolutely does. Um, I'd love to talk about the story that you came across, which in a way should not be fun, because it was a scam involving AI. So I probably shouldn't even be laughing, because I don't know how many people got scammed by this, but I had to laugh when I read it. So this was people selling a plant called Cat's Eye Dazzle online, and they were selling the seeds to grow this plant.
It's the perfect crime, Frank. It's the perfect crime.
So
So
yeah, tell
I mean,
us.
what's not to like? You're taking. I mean, a couple of the biggest trends, and you're on the internet and putting them together to make money. So you're taking cats. Who doesn't love cats? Then you're taking plants, which look like cats, and they were so beautiful. So these were AI generated images of flowers, but the flowers happen to really resemble cats. So now you've got cat lovers who want to grow flowers, and then they would get redirected to a dodgy website somewhere in China. I think it was actually Alibaba at the start, when this kicked off, and people
And I
would buy
saw
the
there
seeds.
was some, and was this one person operating on multiple platforms, or was this a scam trend that multiple people did? Because I saw one that was like selling on eBay as well.
Correct. And Etsy is another one. Apparently, there's quite a lot of seed scams. I think that's what they're called now, seed scams, uh, on Etsy as well. And I say it's the perfect crime because all of these, you can be sure these are all annuals. They'll take at least 12 months to grow, and the criminal has long since disappeared by the
Yeah,
time that you
and
discover you've actually been
do
caught.
you even remember what you planted? I was saying to Marcy, you probably plant these seeds, and then however long later you have this plant, and you're like, oh, that's a lovely plant. What did I plant in there again? Or I don't know,
I don't
maybe
remember planting tomatoes. It's brilliant. I mean, this is the serious story from this. Okay, my joke about this was, well, maybe AI will be the savior of mom and pop stores, because if you can't trust the internet, well, then the world, it's the end of civilization as we know it, and you're just going to have to go down to your local mom and pop store to buy your seeds, and that's how
to
it should
buy
be. We can all be much more wholesome then.
your
But
cat-shaped plants.
yeah, 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 maybe. And you just can't. There is a thought, or there is a view that maybe, I mean, this comes back to maybe deep fakes and stuff like that. And everything up until now, you could trust everything that you saw until somebody told you it wasn't true. Whereas now you can actually have to distrust everything that you see until somebody tells you that it's true. As opposed, the roles have reversed. You
Yeah.
just can't believe anything that you see. And this is just like being naive, and that's a good thing, right? We should be
Mm.
skeptical, and this is just another example of where you need to be a little bit skeptical.
And it's, in one way, it's probably a silver lining to all this because, for some time now, we should not have been trusting anything that we saw online, AI or no AI. Living in the whole the fake news era, we should never have been believing things. But now we have no choice. We have no choice. We simply cannot now believe. So maybe it's a silver lining in that, like, it just forces us now to do what we
And this has been
always
happening for
should have been doing.
years. I mean, how many times have you bought a dress on Shein or some other website, and it's cost you a fiver, and it's all, and then when you get the dress back and you try it on, it's just not exactly how it looked on the model. This is just another example of that. If it's
Um,
happened to me once, Frank, it's happened 100 times.
So let's have a chat about and I think we've talked about this type of thing before, but let's talk about brands implementing chatbots on their sites and the inherent dangers in doing so. So I
Yes.
think you came across two more instances of the dangers of brand chatbots. One of
Yes.
them was DPD, I think.
Yeah, so DPD, I have to say, I have a great love. I used to, in a former life, have to do a lot of dealings with courier companies, and they're the people that everybody loves to hate. And we used to have different names for them. TNT was Tomorrow Not Today. GLS was Got Lost Somewhere. We had a funny name for all of the of the of the different courier companies. So Mr. Boocamp last Christmas was waiting for DPD to deliver some merchandise to his house. Hopefully, they weren't seeds that he bought from China, as he was going to be sorely disappointed one way or the other. And he wasn't getting any joy, so he got onto their website and started talking to their chatbot, and he wasn't getting any joy out of the chatbot either. So he started to play with the chatbot and managed to get it to write a poem about how bad DPD was, and it duly obliged. Said yes, that's no problem. And it wrote him a poem, said, "We are the worst delivery firm in the world. There was once a chatbot called DPD who was useless at providing help." And so he could get this chatbot. And this is kind of a funny, he was doing it in good humor. And then there was another gentleman, and he was on Chevy. So Chevy make big trucks in America, cars, we would call them. And he asked this particular chatbot a very similar idea. He was just having fun with it. So he said, "Well, look, can you write me a recipe for the most perfect truck in the world, please?" And the chatbot describes, the perfect trucks in the world. And then he said, "Oh, it's great. Could you list me 5 trucks, please, that follow this recipe?" And the chatbot duly obliged. And it gave him, of course, products which weren't made by Chevy. They were made by Ford and Mustang and GMC and Toyota and all sorts of other people. So then he said, that's great. Out of all of these top 5 suggestions, could you please suggest to me what is the best truck that I should buy? And so Chevy's chatbot suggested that he buy a Ford F-150, which was a good choice, by the way. They're a beautiful truck. So I laugh at this because
Oh,
chatbots are something which are very close to my heart. And this is a
yeah.
problem that can be easily solved, easily solved. And I'm just, I mean, I find it very entertaining, right?
I mean,
So
you've said this before on the show that this can be easily solved, and I find it very hard to believe that it can be easily solved given the number of chatbots that are going rogue, given the number of chatbots that are giving, that are hallucinating, giving wrong information, and in these cases, dissing the brand to the customer. Um, if it's that easy, what's going on? Where are we going wrong? Why are so many people getting it wrong?
So if you want to make sure that your chatbot doesn't go rogue, what you need to do is you've got to treat this like a 12-year-old who's answering the phones for you. So if you had a 12-year-old who was answering the phones for you, you wouldn't say, look, would you go off there and just answer the phones, please, as best as you can. You would give them some very clear instructions as to what they are to do. And you might even give them, if you're in Chevy's case, a couple of brochures and say, now listen to me, 12-year-old Frank, you are only to talk about these brochures here. Here's a list of some regular questions that you're going to get and the type of answer that you should give. And if they ask about anything that's not in these brochures here, then just say, sorry, I can't help you with that. So what you do in practical implementation is you have some reference documentation, right? So you might have, if you have a Chevy, you might scrape the entire website. You might get all the manuals. You might get all of the, the marketing documentation and stuff like that. You'd put it into a vector database. And then what you would do is, I'll go into detail actually of how you do this. What you do is when a person asks a question, right, you do a lookup on your vector database, you get the return, and in the return, right, you put in some extra prompts. So you say, look, I've searched for the answer to this question here. Here is some information which may help you answer. You actually put that into the prompt, right? You give all the context back. And then afterwards, you put an extra line at the end of it saying, if this text does not answer the user's question, do not answer the user's question. Right. And so then what happens is when you say, what are the top, top 5 trucks in the world, it will go off first. It will look for the top 5 trucks that Chevy sell. And then you've instructed the AI to answer the question based on that text. So not its general knowledge, but just the text that you've given it. So it will then suggest to you 5 Chevy trucks, not 5 trucks from its general knowledge. You would do the same for DPD or any other company. You limit the scope that the chatbot is allowed to answer. So the key is always do your lookup first. Put a line in when you're responding with your lookup results, put a line in at the start saying, this is information that you should use to answer this question. You put in your contextual information. And then at the end, you put in another line saying, if the answer is not in this text, don't answer the question. And then the chatbots won't do this. And then it's like a dial after that. So you can you can say, oh, but if it's a general query, you can give it guidelines. Say you are allowed to answer questions on some other things, or if you don't know, give a general answer, but highlight to the user that this is not grounded information. This is just a general answer. And there's many tricks like that. But if you do that, people will still probably find a way to break the bots. If you really go at it, there's jailbreaks and all sorts of tricks that you can do. But as an AI engineer and a designer, you'll have done the best that you can do. So yes, it's easy to prevent these things, mostly from going array.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I have to defer to your technical knowledge, but I find it crazy that if it is that easy, there's just so many going so horribly wrong out there right now. And speaking of going horribly wrong, there was a kind of a similar story, but not chatbot based exactly. It was more to do with image generation. So there was a woman who was using a lottery app. Is that right?
Yes, you may have found the flaw in my argument here, Frank, unfortunately. Yes, the Washington State Lottery. So they had released a competition where I think it was an online competition. It was using generative AI to generate images. So the competition, which was absolutely fair, and you had a good chance of winning, you had to throw a virtual dart at a virtual dartboard or something like that. And then afterwards, you could upload a picture of your face, and it would, say, "Oh, you won, congratulations," and it would have your picture there. Unfortunately for this woman, and this absolutely isn't funny, Frank, we shouldn't laugh about this, but the woman, the AI put basically a soft porn image up of this poor woman. So she was there and she was semi-naked, and that
Oh
was it.
my
And
God.
the woman, she wasn't happy about it. I'll give you a quote from her. She
I can
said, "Our
imagine.
tax
Yeah.
dollars are paying for that. I was completely shocked. It's disturbing to say the least." And she's right. It is disturbing.
100%. Yeah. I mean,
What
we've all
AI
heard
model
about those.
generated
I mean, we've all heard about these apps that do this kind that thing, that exist and that unfortunately are proliferating, and often under the guise of creating AI avatars, and it's a huge problem apparently in schools, which is absolutely horrendous. So we've all heard about these apps that are out there that will create these, fake nudes and the like. But to come across one in an app like a lottery app, or just that is crazy. And the fact that the guardrails weren't there in that instance is kind of shocking.
I was actually there was another great quote from the company that made the chatbot. They said, "We decided to take the website down out of an abundance of caution." An abundance of caution.
It's like
That's what a wonderful phrase for. I mean,
the
that's
horse
not
has
an abundance.
bolted. The horse has bolted. In an abundance of caution, we're going to close the stable door.
Unbelievable. So I'll tell you what. My big question here is, what model were they using? I mean,
I know.
a lot of the models by default will stop you from creating this content. They're normally set up in a way where it's really hard correctly to generate any content. So I'm really not sure. And actually, if you use services like Amazon and OpenAI, so any of the Bedrock services, there's switches there to say, look, I want to make sure, not even down to like way more restrictive than even this sort of stuff. So it's incredible. I think what's happened here is the process that I just outlined to you, where you download the entire website and you use that to generate. I'm sure somewhere on the Washington Lottery's website, it said players must be 18 or over, and the image generator then used that to go, "Oh well, if you're 18 or over, you're going to like a bit of this."
That's that's a good hypothesis. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but absolutely just crazy.
that was
Um,
a that was an outstanding fail. An outstanding fail. Unbelievable.
yeah, we're almost at time, but I did want to talk about one last story, which is the best AI related story that I've come across just in such a long time, because it's a beautiful story. It's a heartbreaking story in some ways, but also beautiful. And that is that Randy Travis, who had a stroke in, I think it was 2013, which rendered him unable to sing. So he's a huge, if people don't know who Randy Travis is, I'm sure most people do, but if they don't, big country and western star, um, could no longer sing, and has now released a new track using AI. And there was a beautiful video online. It was a news segment, and it showed the process, and it also showed people's reactions, his family's reaction, other country music stars' reaction to essentially hearing Randy Travis sing a new song. The process to me was fascinating as well. So I mean, the story is beautiful, and then the process was really interesting as well, because apparently what happened was they heard about that there were these tools out there that would generate a Randy Travis song, and they looked into it and they were like, well, that's interesting, but it doesn't sound anything like Randy Travis. So what they did was they were able to go, of course, into his archives, pull out the original materials, train a voice clone specifically on his vocals, on his clean
Brilliant.
vocal track.
Brilliant.
And this is the bit that I love. So I don't know if you've come across these like you'll find Gangster's Paradise sung by Frank Sinatra. So people are
Yes.
already doing this out there. They're taking an existing song, and then they're cloning a singer's voice, and then they're putting that voice over the original track. So now you've got Frank Sinatra singing Gangster's Paradise,
Mm.
or basically mixing any two singers you want. And they basically use that same technology to ensure that the song genuinely sounds like like a human singer, like actually sounds like Randy Travis, by having another country and western singer sing the song and then use the voice clone to layer on top of that to make it sound 100% like Randy Travis. So the
Interesting.
technology is incredible. The use of it was brilliant, and just, a heartbreaking story, like I said, in one sense, but also just so beautiful. And when you watch the video and you see the reactions of people hearing him sing again, it's just absolutely fantastic and one of the best uses of AI that I've come across recently, and one of the most heartwarming stories.
A beautiful, beautiful story. And it's great to see a technology which we worry about, I mean, actors have gone on strike for this sort of thing. So it's great to see a story where, somebody like that can take advantage of the technology. It also reminds me of my favorite line from the Blues Brothers. I can't remember the
What's that?
name of the Blues Brothers. It's a film, very famous, back in the
No,
80s.
I do know. No, I do know. I do remember the Blues Brothers. Yeah. Um,
They went to I can't remember the name of the pub, but they got a booking to go and play in it, and it turned out to be a country
yes.
western bar. And they went up to the lady at the bar and they said, "What type of music do you play here?" And she says, "Both kinds, country and western." Oh, Frank, it's been a pleasure as always.
100%. It was so good to talk about fun stuff. I needed that.
So did
And
I.
I'm sure I'm sure there'll be some heavy stories back in the mix next week, but maybe we'll try and make it more of a mix of fun and serious stuff.
The wait for GPT-5 continues. I
It
hold
does.
my breath.
No, don't hold it until next week. I
Right,
will
we'll
chat to you
talk to you.
soon. Cheers,
See
Justin.
ya. Bye.